She is dead. The girl who wanted to live in defiance of a rare genetic condition. The girl who fought, in the end, to live in defiance of NHS doctors and a judge who declared and ruled that she should just lie down and die, is gone now. We were not and are not allowed to know her name. Her grieving family are still barred by the court that condemned their daughter to death from naming her in public. We have been allowed to know her only as ST, which is coincidentally shorthand for saint. Saints are remembered long after they are gone. This is where we are now. A sovereign individual says she wants to live, asks the state to help her stay alive, makes clear her intention to exercise her God-given free will to seek potentially life-saving treatment elsewhere. 2 psychiatrists listened to the 19-year-old while she lived and concluded that she was of sound mind and able to make her own decisions regarding her treatment. Other sovereign individuals stood ready to help the girl to finance her proposed trip to Canada for experimental treatment. Despite all that, in sullen defiance of all that, NHS doctors decided her unwillingness to accept her death was inevitable, made her delusional. Everyone's death is inevitable. Are we to accept that each one of us is delusional if we seek to fight death every inch of the way? A judge agreed ST was deluded and the die was cast. Now she is dead, as prescribed by the state. This is where we are now, confronted at every turn by an overmighty, overweening state that has assumed the ultimate power over sovereign individuals. Somewhere along the line, at some point most of us overlooked, myself included, sovereign Britain was subverted or otherwise replaced by corporate Britain, in which a board of corporate types assumes the authority to make all decisions on our behalf. I say this is unlawful in every way that matters. It's also monstrous and just plain wrong. Too few people know, remember, far less celebrate what it is to be sovereign. We're not taught any of this at school, which is hardly surprising given the recent context. But the truth is that we are born sovereign, and to be sovereign is to have absolute authority over our own bodies. We are subject to the common law of the land, which we break only when we harm others, damage their property, steal what is not ours, or behave fraudulently in our dealings with others. Every other attempt by the state to interfere with our freedom to go about our lives unmolested is the stuff of statute, which is the legislation, acts and bills drawn up and passed by Parliament. Legislation has power over us only if we consent to it. Rules and regulations defined by statute are said in dictionaries of law to acquire the force of law only when we grant our consent. A fact of being sovereign is that if we withhold or withdraw our consent, that is the end of the matter. And deep down where the state and all its little wizards would prefer we did not look, the state knows this too. Over and over again, it has been necessary to pull the state up by the scruff of its scrawny neck and remind it of the limits of its power, and to have it acknowledge instead the supreme power of the sovereign individual. Magna Carta was the consequence of one of those times when an overmighty king had to be reminded that, like everyone else, he was subject to the law of the land. King John wriggled on that hook, but it was swallowed deep. Parliament would prefer Magna Carta did not exist, but it does exist and always will, and it burns the state like holy water thrown in a demon's face. If the state could destroy Magna Carta, unmake it, then it surely would. The state seeks to dismiss it, to paper over it, to distract us and have us look the other way, to persuade us the great charter's power is gone long ago like that of a battery run flat. But deep down, the state knows the law of the land still thrums with power over them. The fact, the inconvenient truth, is that the law of the land is older than Parliament. Magna Carta, which only restated and reaffirmed the ancient common law, was sealed before Parliament even existed, and so is literally beyond Parliament's remit. The unwritten constitution for which Magna Carta speaks is likewise out of Parliament's reach. The law of the land just is. We all know without having to be told that it's wrong to kill, to do harm, to steal, to lie. Parliament, government, the state are no more and no less than creations of human beings. That which is created by human beings stands beneath human beings, is subordinate to human beings, serves and does not rule human beings. Remember that too when talk turns to artificial intelligence. Nefarious types in the state know the inalienable rights of people are constant as the North Star. Many of the state's minions may have chosen to forget as much. Plenty of Parliament's wizards are, like so many other people, genuinely unaware of the truth of the law. Lack of knowing is of no significance. The truth is the truth, whether it's known or not. Magna Carta was the restating of truth, restating of the common law that by the time of the sealing of that charter was old beyond the reach of memory. The Nuremberg Code, born in the dark shadow of World War II and all its attendant horrors, was another time when some people had to be reminded of that which is true, which is that the individual, every individual, is sovereign, having absolute authority over his or her flesh and blood, and that nothing at all might be done to a sovereign individual against their will without their consent. The code is primarily for the attention of physicians, and point number 1 states, quote, "The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion." The Nuremberg Code is not binding in a legal sense, but which decent human being would dispute the thinking and intent at the heart of its matter? How much of the Nuremberg Code was ignored during the COVID debacle? How much is still being ignored while I speak these words? There is much debate over whether or not the state uses what are called legal fictions to gull us into submitting to its legislation. There are those who argue that our birth certificates and the registering of our births are part of a legal process, legal and not lawful, by which a corporation is created in each of our names as it appears on our birth certificate, and then by the process of the registering of the birth, that corporation is handed off to the state to do with as it pleases. That legal fiction has been described as being like an overcoat tailored by the state and offered to each of us for wearing. If we don the coat, the thinking goes, we unwittingly accept the rules of the game the state is playing. Be that as it may, entertain the speculation about legal fictions and straw men, or don't. But the fact remains that the power of the state, a creation of man, over any of us is only that which any of us consents to give. And yet the 19-year-old girl ST is dead now, without her consent, despite her spoken determination to fight for life. This is where we are now, and this is why I ask whether it's time for the call for change that is described by some as revolution. Last week I put a couple of lines on social media wondering if anyone else was thinking about revolution. Last time I checked, each of the messages had been viewed over 1 million times. I've been contacted by people from all over the West saying their thoughts chime with mine. I hear especially from Americans looking on in desperation while their country floods from the south with millions of newcomers of unknown provenance and intent. I live in a world of unanswered questions. I want to know the truth of the products pushed as vaccines. I want to know how many people were killed or hurt by those products. I want to know why hundreds more people are dying every day in this country than might have been estimated based on previous years. That's the equivalent of an unexplained passenger plane crash every day. Why are those people dying? I want to know what happened in the care homes into which vulnerable elderly people were herded from their hospital beds. So many died, many alone and in circumstances of abject misery. I want to know exactly how those elders died. I know that many of their loved ones want to know those details too. Yet again, we have plainly reached a point when the state must be reminded who's in charge, which is to say, we are in charge, the sovereign individuals of this land. This is where we are now in the West. The state is making no secret of the further powers it would award itself, fantasising about kicking down our doors and stamping on our lives. But we are sovereign people in sovereign nations, watching the day-by-day reality of a corporate takeover of our very existence. Authority over our lives, our way of life, unlawfully assumed by corporations. Corporation, there's another word worth paying attention to. It means to make or fashion into a body, a whole composed of united parts. If a corporation isn't a Frankenstein's monster, that unhappiest of creations and capable of inflicting terrible harm upon those it has come to despise, then I don't know what is. Here's the thing, I have no interest in pitchforks and flaming torches. The killing of people and the destruction of property and infrastructure are the activities of government and the state, and I want no part of that. What I do want is to talk about the need and desire for change felt by millions, many millions. I say every politician who pushed lockdowns, mandates and experimental medical procedures, not to mention the net zero suicide note, might usefully be walked out of the Palace of Westminster and sent home. We're past the time when reform was possible. It's time now for something new, something clean. Is it just me, or is there something in the wind? That's just me, of course. You can disagree. Keep your tweets and emails coming through the show. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk and you can tweet me at gbnews and I'll try and get to